Global pandemic and racial politics and protests have overshadowed the crisis that shook the nation back in 2018 when migrant children were taken from their parents under you-know-who's zero-tolerance policy. But journalist Jacob Soboroff shares his firsthand accounts of the story and how the border crisis is still raging today in his new book, Separated, Inside an American Tragedy. Jacob, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Whoopi. It's good to be with you all.
One of the first. It's good to have you. You were one of the first people inside the detention centers, and you got to look at what was going on in there and at those children who had been separated from their parents in 2018. When you went in, did this look like something you thought you would ever see in the U.S., or did it look like we were in some other country altogether?
No, it looked like something that the United States would go and stop from happening in another nation, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. I went into first a former Walmart, 250,000 square feet in Brownsville, Texas, where children were being held inside 22 hours a day, 1,500 boys. Hundreds of them had been separated from their parents. And then just a couple days later, on Father's Day 2018, I went to what was called the epicenter by a Trump administration official, the McAllen Border Patrol processing station. You're looking at it right there. Children laying on concrete floors, covered by Mylar blankets, supervised by security contractors in a watchtower. It makes me sick every time I talk about it to this day. But that's why I wanted to write the book. I saw all this in real time with my own eyes, and I had no idea how. That's why I call it Separated Inside an American Tragedy. I'm as patriotic as any of us, and I love this country, but I wondered, how could our country do this to people coming here to seek refuge, to seek peace and a better life? And that's what I did the book, and that's what I explored in the book.
I certainly hope that Trump supporters will read your book. So experts have gone so far as to call what happened to these migrant children torture. And yet you believe that what's happening now at the border is actually worse. Tell us what you think about that.
You're right, Joy. And you know, one thing I'll say about that is it's not my words. It's the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's Physicians for Human Rights, a Nobel Peace Prize winning organization that characterizes what the Trump administration did as a systematic campaign of torture of 5,400 children under the guise of an immigration policy. And these children will be left with lifelong trauma for the rest of their lives, 5,400. And today, this is still going on. On Friday, there's a deadline for 335 parents and children, again, who are on the verge of separation by the Trump administration. The idea, when I saw this, that it would stop and end when President Trump signed the executive order that I remember really clearly, you guys talked about on the show, and it was supposed to be the end of the policy, it turns out it wasn't. And so when I say it's worse today, it really is, not only because separations are still happening, but they're happening in the context of a global pandemic of the coronavirus, and the conditions inside the places where these migrants are being held today are worse than ever before.
You know, Jacob, your reporting on this has really been so incredible, and I know I, for one, am very grateful for all the work you've done, but these ICE detention centers have become absolute hotspots for COVID-19, and thousands of migrants in custody have contracted the virus. Nearly half of the employees at one center in Arizona have tested positive. They called the situation, quote, a war zone. What are the conditions at the facilities like this today, and is there anything that can be done to help keep these people safe?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So the war zone comment was given to me and my colleague Julia Ainsley at NBC by an employee inside the Eloy Detention Center, not far from Phoenix, where you're from. I mean, you know it probably better than anyone that on this panel right now. And inside Eloy, half the staff, nearly half the staff tested positive for the coronavirus. Detainees say through their lawyers and in court declarations that they don't have proper social distancing. Employees say they don't have proper PPE. And lawyers continue to argue that the best case scenario would be to release people who are in danger because they're here trying to get asylum. Asylum is an international right, but the Trump administration doesn't see it that way, and they continue to put in more restrictive practices. And that's why today, you asked about today, in these ICE family detention centers, the deadline is Friday. Lawyers say just let the children and parents out together. They have the ability to do it right now as all of us are talking. They could probably do it before the end of this segment, decide to let out the parents and children. Yet the Trump administration continues to dangle separation as a possibility over these families. Why? I don't know. And again, it comes back to the book. What I learned from the people that were in charge of this policy, it doesn't mean there weren't heroes, and there certainly were at every twist and turn trying to stop this from happening back then in 2018, but the administration and the political folks inside are the ones that kept pushing it through, and they're still successful in doing that today.